Elizabeth Báthory, or Elizabeth Báthory in her native Hungarian, is a name that sends a shiver down the spine. Feared, reviled, and often compared to vampires, she's been called one of the most prolific female serial killers in history. Her legend has inspired countless horror stories, but is the tale of the Blood Countess really so simple? In this video, we peel back the layers of myth to uncover the real woman behind the veil of terror. Born into the powerful and well-connected Báthory family on August 7, 1560, in Nyírbátor, Elizabeth was aristocracy from the cradle. Her family had vast holdings across Hungary and Transylvania, and they boasted links to kings and princes, including Stephen Báthory, who would become King of Poland. This political pedigree wasn't just for show, it came with real influence and real enemies. The Hungary Elizabeth grew up in was fractured. The country had been devastated by the Ottoman victory at the Battle of Mohács, leaving it divided among the Ottomans, the Habsburgs, and the semi-independent Principality of Transylvania. Noble families like the Báthorys had to navigate a deadly dance of alliances, war, and power politics. Elizabeth's early life was marked by privilege, but also by potential health struggles. Reports suggest she may have suffered from seizures, possibly caused by epilepsy. Treatments at the time were steeped in superstition and often brutal. Some scholars believe inbreeding within the noble lines may have contributed to her condition, though this remains speculative. She was betrothed to Ferenc Nadasdy at the age of 10 or 11 and married by 15, a common political strategy among nobility. The Nadasdy family brought military prestige, while the Báthory name carried immense political weight. Elizabeth didn't even take her husband's name. He took hers. That's how powerful the Báthorys were. Their marriage was as much a political alliance as a personal union. Elizabeth managed multiple estates, including the infamous Cheta Castle, Katis, while Ferenc gained notoriety as the Black Knight of Hungary for his brutal campaigns against the Ottomans. While Ferenc was off at war, Elizabeth effectively ruled in his absence. She managed taxes, legal disputes, agricultural output, and local defence. Surviving letters and financial documents show she was literate, calculating, and highly capable. But she was also feared. Rumours circulated about her temper and her treatment of servants. And after Ferenc's death in 1604, those whispers turned into accusations. Testimonies from the time suggest that punishments in Elizabeth Báthory's household escalated dramatically. What may have begun as relatively commonplace disciplinary measures, like slaps or brief confinement, reportedly evolved into shocking acts of cruelty. Witnesses described lacerations, forced exposure to freezing temperatures, and even the application of red-hot irons to the skin. One of the most sensational claims, still echoed in popular culture today, is that Elizabeth bathed in the blood of virgins to maintain her youth. However, historians note that the earliest detailed references to blood bathing appear well after Elizabeth's death, suggesting this may be a later embellishment rather than a contemporaneous fact. While cruelty seems plausible, the vampiric imagery is more likely a product of myth-making than verifiable history. Regardless of the factual accuracy of these extreme allegations, the sheer brutality recounted in various testimonies has played a major role in cementing Elizabeth's enduring infamy as the Blood Countess. As rumours of torture and murder swirled, they eventually reached King Matthias II of Hungary. In response to growing public concern, the king appointed György Thurzó, the Palatine of Hungary, and a relative of Elizabeth by marriage, to lead a formal investigation. In the Hungarian noble hierarchy, the Palatine was second only to the king, acting as his chief judicial officer. Thurzó had broad powers to collect testimony, conduct searches, and even coordinate arrests. Thurzó gathered testimonies from an extensive cross-section of society: peasants, minor nobles, former estate staff, and even individuals who had once worked directly for the Báthorys. Archival records suggest that over 300 people were interviewed. While not all accounts were equally credible, some amounted to hearsay. Many included overlapping details of brutal beatings, burnings, starvation, and in some cases lethal mistreatment. One major challenge for investigators was separating rumour from fact. Thurzó was under pressure to address the scandal efficiently, yet Elizabeth's aristocratic status meant the process had to be handled delicately. She could not be treated like a common criminal without risking backlash from the powerful Báthory family and the broader nobility. To bolster the case, Thurzo collected signed depositions and attempted to match them with physical evidence found at Kaktic, pronounced Kačica, castle. But political and financial motivations also loomed large. As a wealthy widow and member of an influential family, Elizabeth controlled vast estates. Rival noble factions may have had strong incentives to see her fall. King Matthias himself owed the Nadasdy Báthory estate a considerable sum, loans that had helped fund his wars against the Ottoman Empire. If Elizabeth were convicted, her lands and wealth could be forfeited to the crown, conveniently erasing the king's debts. Such a scenario would provide strong incentive to amplify or accelerate the charges against her. It's also likely that once it became public knowledge, a formal investigation was underway, individuals with personal grievances or hopes of reward came forward in a wave of accusations. But what distinguished this inquiry from mere hearsay was the consistency of detail. Multiple witnesses, across class and location, described similar patterns of sadistic punishment. Still, some of the most damning testimonies came from people interrogated under torture, weakening their reliability compared to those who volunteered information freely. The dramatic turning point came in late December 1610, often dated to either the 29th or 30th, when Thurzo arrived at Kaktic Castle with a royal warrant. Some accounts claim he attempted a discreet arrest to avoid public outrage, while others describe a more theatrical raid. According to these more dramatic retellings, Thurzo's party found girls dead or dying on the premises, some allegedly bearing signs of physical abuse. Skeptics argue that these girls may have been sick or injured servants under Elizabeth's care, a common duty of noble households at the time. Yet the presence of any bodies, especially amid circulating abuse allegations, was damning. Surviving depositions indicate Thurzo and his men found enough evidence to place Elizabeth under immediate house arrest. This wasn't the dungeon or public prison one might expect. House arrest for nobles meant confinement within their own estates, with strict limitations on movement and communication. Elizabeth was confined to Kaktic Castle and placed under guard, her world suddenly reduced to a few rooms and monitored interactions. Meanwhile, legal proceedings moved swiftly, though not against Elizabeth herself. Instead, her inner circle bore the brunt of formal prosecution. Among those arrested were 4 close attendants: Dorothea Sentes, Ilona Jo, Janos Ujvari, and Katerina Banica. Court records from the trial held in Bitka, then part of Nadasdy lands, show they were charged with aiding and abetting torture and murder. Some confessed under torture. 3 were sentenced to death. Dorothea and Ilona reportedly had their fingers torn out with red-hot pincers before being burned alive. Others received lesser sentences. Elizabeth, however, was spared a public trial, not necessarily out of mercy, but because her status made such proceedings too politically explosive. A scandal of this scale could entangle multiple noble families and damage the king himself. Thus, her punishment was essentially settled behind closed doors. No public verdict was issued, but Elizabeth was confined to her castle indefinitely. Accounts of her imprisonment vary. Some legends claim she was bricked into a windowless room, with only small openings for food. More likely, she was confined to a few rooms with limited staff, still under constant watch. Either way, she never left Kaktic Castle again. She died there on August 21st, 1614, at around 54 years old. According to one account, she complained of feeling cold, laid down, and passed away quietly during the night. There's no credible evidence of foul play. Her death marked the end of any formal legal action. Even in death, her story refused to settle. Initial reports claim she was buried in the local church at Kaktic, but unrest among villagers may have prompted her family to secretly relocate the body, possibly to the Báthory seat in Exed. Her final resting place remains unknown, feeding the legend further. From the 18th century onward, Elizabeth Báthory's story only grew darker. Oral traditions and Gothic tales transformed her into a symbol of vampiric evil. Though the blood-bathing myth originated long after her death, it stuck, intertwining her legacy with vampire folklore, especially as Eastern European superstitions gained Western attention in the 19th century. In time, Elizabeth became a fixture in horror literature, film, and even heavy metal, often labelled as the most prolific female serial killer in history. Estimates of her victims vary wildly. Some say 650, while others suggest 30 to 80 is more realistic. Still, no physical bodies have been conclusively identified. So what's the truth? Most scholars agree that Elizabeth likely oversaw a cruel and abusive household, where violence towards servants was normalized, especially young women. But the more theatrical claims, like bathing in blood, are likely products of legend, shaped by fear, misogyny, and political manipulation. In the end, Elizabeth Báthory remains a haunting paradox. A powerful noblewoman, a possible sadist, a victim of politics, and a creation of centuries of myth-making. Whether she was a bloodthirsty monster or a scapegoat of her era, her story endures, reminding us that history, horror, and legend are often intertwined in ways we may never fully unravel. Join us next time as we delve deeper into the annals of history's darkest figures.